I'm Nick Hughes, and this is Founders Live Conversations.
Hey everyone, welcome to Founders Live Conversations. I am Nick Hughes. I am the founder and CEO of Founders Live, and today we have a special guest. We have Chris Raroque. He's the CEO of Aloa, and we're going to hear today about development services. We're going to hear about his story of creating a new company, and we're going to hear about the new experience around developing your products and services. Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Nick. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is great. Welcome to the show. And, we're having a conversation here. We're going to hear about your journey. What I would like to do first and foremost here, Chris, is we want to get to know you just a little bit more. So share with us a little bit of just your background, and then we'll get into how you started your company and your startup. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I'm from Dallas, Texas, born and raised, but currently live in Washington, D.C. So that's where I'm based right now. Have a software development background, but not formally. So studied economics in college, was really interested in business, and just coded for fun on the side. But I've always had a passion for that, loved the space, which is really fitting because now that's basically my career, and that's basically the company that I started. It's just all about software development.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And were you attracted to, computers, technology, even growing up? Like, what was the connection to start following this process of building out a development firm?
Yeah, honestly, at least where I was in Texas, and I guess at the time, startups, entrepreneurships, that was not a thing. And then even at Vanderbilt University, where I went to college, where Aloa really started, entrepreneurship was not a big thing. It is now, so I think it's starting to become a thing. But it wasn't really a career path that most people had. And so I actually was trying to go into finance consulting. But one winter break, freshman year, I decided to pick up coding seriously. And I ended up developing an app for fun. And because there was just such little, stuff like that happening on campus, some people took notice of that and they were like, hey, we need some development stuff. And being a freshman, I was like, okay, cool. I'm down for anything. Let me go try it out. And that kind of being pulled into that, I think kind of got me thinking more about, startups in general, building a company, and kind of shadowing those people that, I guess those seniors that took me in at the time and were like, this is actually something you could do, is if you do software development for us. And yeah, that's kind of how things got started. I always was fascinated by computers and stuff, and tech in general, but having tech and startups and those two worlds colliding and having it as a career path, that was only something I started realizing midway through college.
Yeah. Well, I want to transition into that because, my personal story, and I know that you have asked about it previously, and, we won't spend too much time there, but, my personal story doesn't necessarily start with entrepreneurship. Coming out of or being in university and college, it didn't start there, and it didn't mean that I wasn't creative. It didn't mean that I wanted to push the limits, especially as an employee. But I can tell you that it wasn't on my mind. And so, why or what do you think it was about entrepreneurship that sparked earlier in your path, that even at college, when we're usually told hey, study this and think about your career and what company you want to go work for, what about entrepreneurship tugged at you at that earlier age?
Yeah, honestly, I kind of feel like I just got so obsessed with kind of solving problems and building things and just building things to solve people's pain points, to the point where I didn't even know what I was doing was entrepreneurship. I just thought I was building cool things and solving problems. And I think that's kind of how I fell into it. And then formally, I started realizing, oh, you know what, this is actually like people do build things professionally and solve problems professionally, and that's kind of what an entrepreneur does. And so I kind of got fascinated by that, but I think I naturally kind of just fell into it based on my, curiosity about just solving and solving things and building things for people.
Yeah, and you just said one of the key words. One of the key words is, a couple key words there is solving problems. And we talk a lot about this within Founders Live, is really around, it's not about just like thinking about an idea and hey, that seems to be a good idea to do. Really looking at what are the problems in the world that we want to solve and why. Why are we solving that problem? So as we get into what you're building and what really is this software development firm and all that nature, what problem are you solving? Like what key thing did you see in the world? And I want to dive deeper than like, hey, people just need products built and they need engineers and whatnot. Let's go deeper than that. Like what did you see that really needed to be solved?
Yeah. So you mind if I tell a story? Because maybe that'll help a little bit.
We love it. We love stories on Founders Live.
Okay. So I basically was building all these tools for myself and building cool apps and products and stuff on the Vanderbilt campus. And these companies approached me and they were like, yeah, can you build stuff for us? And naturally I started kind of getting into freelancing, which at the time I didn't know that's what that was, but building these things for these companies, getting paid for it, freelancing. And as I started doing that, the demand pretty much increased to the point where I couldn't do it on my own. So I was able to rope one of my high school friends who I knew, okay, he can code. We started doing the client work. The demand was still too high. And we tried finding ways to basically get more manpower for development. And we tried other students, which had a whole world of problems. Like students, like clients don't accept it if you tell them, oh, we couldn't hit your deadline because they had an exam. We tried using freelancers, we tried US agencies, and there were just a lot of problems with price, or like freelancers, they love to manage their own schedule, and the freelancers for a reason, but the clients that we're working with needed more long-term solutions. And we were just kind of getting frustrated, like, why is it so hard to, get this extra manpower? And what ended up happening was I got cold emailed by a firm in the Ukraine. And I've never been approached outside of the US for software development stuff, but which now I realize is super common. And I was so surprised that their website was way better than ours, way better than anything I could have built. So I was like, okay, maybe we should give them a shot. And so told one of the clients, do you mind if we try this? If it doesn't work out, I'll take care of it. Like, I'll develop it. You won't need any extra costs. I just want to see what happens. And it ended up being one of the smoothest projects that we've ever done. And I decided to check, like, did we just get lucky there? I thought that, outsourcing abroad has a negative connotation. I thought this would be way more challenging. And so I decided to try it again with another firm abroad that I found. And it turns out I was right. It ended up blowing up. It was horrible. And I was like, why was that one so different, than the first experience I had outsourcing? And I didn't realize it, but just in me trying to get that extra manpower, going freelancers, students, in-house, or not in-house, but agencies, and then eventually outsourcing abroad, I was trying to figure out how can I outsource, basically. And through working with the firms and finding a good experience, then finding a horrible experience, I was just thinking to myself, I'm very technical. And this was really hard. Like, this was really hard to get to this point and find a good firm and work with them. I can't imagine somebody that's not technical trying to do this. So basically, I became obsessed with this, can I almost like solve outsourcing and make it so it's just more accessible to people. Like, I want my dad to be able to, use our service and then just have like peace of mind, be able to sleep at night, that he can outsource abroad effectively. And that's kind of why, like, how all this happened. And
Yeah. And I think that's a really good jumping off point to talk about, why outsource development work especially as some of the people that are watching right now, they're early team. They're looking at getting their products built. They might not have the talent at this point, so they need to look another direction. And so, why is it important to outsource the work? And then we'll get into how you shifted and tweaked that a little bit.
Yeah. Honestly, there's so many different ways to build a product, and each way, I guess, it has its own place. So we definitely don't believe that it's a blanket statement like, oh, outsourcing, like this is the way to do it. Like you have to do it. Really, I think you need to pick the right tool based on the situation. And sometimes hiring in-house, that's the way to go. Equity, that's the way to go. Freelance, that's the way to go. Really, outsourcing, it's a really good alternative if you don't want to have to take the plunge in hiring full-time or giving up equity. And then the other option is if you want to supplement some existing developers. So if you have an existing team, outsourcing is a great way to basically increase manpower without also having to take the risk of hiring a W-2 employee and potentially having to manage them, let them go. It's a very almost like scalable way to like increase your team's output. And I think those are the two main use cases. Is if you're trying to build a product early on, you don't want to have to take the plunge of hiring full time, or if you want to supplement an existing development team and you want to conserve like your internal resources and just outsource everything else.
Yeah. So tell us how you approach that, because you mentioned earlier there's quite a few options, and depending on what soil they are on in the world, as well as the quality and the price. So how did you go approaching building this out to hire these developers? Like, tell us a little bit more about the uniqueness around Aloa.
Yeah, honestly, when we first started, we just had the goal of like, can we solve outsourcing? We don't care how it happens. We just want to see if we can replicate it and make it so anyone can come here and then get their product built and just have absolute peace of mind that it's happening. And so we looked at a bunch of different angles of how that could happen. And the first one that we looked at was, okay, the quality of the developers, picking the right team. What kind of impact does that have? And it turns out that it has a massive impact. If you pick the wrong team, it's not going to work out. But there's still so much more past that. So rather than just be a matchmaker, which a lot of people in the space are, we do have that really highly vetted network of developers. But we also developed out a lot of tools, infrastructure, and process, and basically became the experts in software outsourcing. So you don't have to be. So you can basically focus on your business, and then we take care of the rest of it. That's basically what we are in a nutshell. But it is a really complex. We've figured out it's a really complex challenging problem. Is just outsourcing, and it goes way beyond just getting the right team. Like we had to build our own project management tool. We even have to build our own payment tool, because facilitating international payments, it's not as easy as people think of just, hey, let me go pay this firm abroad, or let me pay these people. There's a lot of compliance issues, and a lot of things you have to think about that we didn't know going into it, which is why it took us so long to get to this point.
Yeah. And so what would you say that you learned? Let's go with like a first lesson as you got going. And how you got started here. What did you learn? What are a couple things that you would like tell others, and maybe even in the space? But what were some big ones that you learned as you got started?
Yeah. Do you mean like in general? Or you mean like in software outsourcing?
Let's go software outsourcing, since it's a really important thing.
Yeah. And this is honestly one of the coolest things that I think I've been able to just like learn from this experience. It's just like the cultural nuances between a lot of the countries and the regions. So a lot of people just assume, oh, it doesn't matter where I get it developed. Like software, like if they can develop it, they can develop it. But as we've been working with all these different countries, we've started figuring out Like India, super great at Android, but iOS, we haven't had the best experience. And then vice versa. In South America, their iOS developers and their web developers are amazing, but Android's a bit lacking. So just things like that are things we wouldn't have figured out. And then there's also just cultural differences which impact communication, which a lot of people don't consider. Like they just assume, okay, we're going to get this done. But to be honest, coding and the software, that's the easiest part of software development. The communication, the management, all these things, I would actually say like those are the challenging things. And being able to navigate the cultural differences really helped us figure out how can we make it so we can navigate those other challenges like communication, because they really go hand in hand. So that's something really cool we figured out was it goes way beyond software. Like you have to take into account the cultural differences and the nuances between each country when figuring out where to outsource.
Well, that's true. And, we've learned that a lot with Founders Live, which is quite far around the world. I mean, we're in we're like 25 countries, maybe more now. And it's insane that when you actually start to look at, cultural differences, time zone differences, the words that individuals use that might mean different things in actually a different, culture or, language, it's difficult. So how do you bridge that gap? And I guess the second question is, I think you mentioned this a bit before, but what specific country, like your developers are in what areas of the world, and then how do you mitigate some of those cultural differences?
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the first question again that you had?
Yeah, the question, what areas of the world, like, do you have developers in other countries, and are you servicing clients in other parts of the world?
Yeah. We are servicing clients in other parts of the world outside the US, but most of the clients are in the US. And the primary, primary regions that we have developers in, it's India and then South America and Eastern Europe. And we figured out, we've experimented with some other countries, especially in Asia, but again, something we figured out is certain countries are just better at outsourcing certain things. And I think those three regions are the ones that after trying out so many different other partners in other regions, these are the ones that we've consistently been able to go back to and be like, okay, it seems like this is what they're good at.
Yeah. And so walk us through, as a, let's say, a company, an earlier stage company that has the resources, the budget, they're ready to get going, they need this product built. What can they expect? What's the process to walk through with you and your team to even get to a point where they can get a product built? So walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So they would first reach out. We would talk to them. Someone on our team, which we call the strategist, and they're with you the entire time. And we figured out that that's really important to have one single person that you can always rely on in the long term, that understands your business. And even if the developers change out or anything happens, this person's always consistent, because we figured out when it comes to building software, the people on the end that are building the software, it really helps to have that business understanding of what's going on. And they do accumulate that knowledge over time, which is why the strategist stays with you. And then so they're on our side. So the strategist would meet with you, figure out the business needs, and then figure out, again, which region, which partner in our network would be a good fit. Once they figure that out, you're presented with options. You get to interview the different firms that we have in our network that we think are a good fit. And then usually one or sometimes multiple, if it's needed, are picked. After that, basically the project, and it's so different depending on what the actual project is. But usually project management is done through our proprietary project management platform that we've had to build. And it's really great for managing these three different parties, which is the startup, the firm outsourcing, and then us as almost this third party. So it's built for that, and it's really good for the time zone difference and accountability. So we tried things like Slack, Asana, Jira. this is specifically like these tools are built for software development outsourcing abroad. So you'd use the project management tool, go through the project, and then honestly, it usually it's usually not a one-time delivery because a lot of clients end up going with us and then updating things, and it's usually more of a long-term thing. But the project gets delivered. We're constantly auditing and vetting our network, and even the firm that you're using. We do things like in the background, like these bi-weekly audits where we just check and we just make sure, are the best practices being followed? Is everything like, if we were audited by a third-party company, would that firm and would the project pass? And we do that retroactively just to make sure, or proactively. We do that proactively just to make sure, like, things are going smoothly. And so that's the process. Honestly, it's and just to summarize it, you work with a strategist and they're with you the entire way. You pick a firm from our very, very highly vetted firm pool of basically agencies abroad that we have really deep connections with. You use our tools like our project management and payment tool to basically do the actual project, facilitate payment, do all that stuff. And then the product gets delivered, and then it just kind of, you go through those last two steps as many times as you need until the product is where it's at, or you get to wherever you need to go as a company.
That's great. Thank you for walking through that. And, one thing that came to mind was, what are the biggest misconceptions that early stage entrepreneurs, teams that want to work with you or outsource in general? Let's review those real quick. What would you say to what you maybe hear a lot that you can correct?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I had the same exact feelings towards outsourcing when I first kind of got into it. It does not have a good reputation, and honestly, that's for good reason. Because I was thinking about it, why did that one project go so smoothly the first time? Like, I thought this, outsourcing was bad. And if you think about it, I really think the technology it wasn't there to support outsourcing abroad. So like, think 20 years ago, just try to imagine running a software project, or even just like working with your team where you only had email. Like, Skype was not a thing even, and clearly Zoom was not a thing. So just like, imagine trying to work across the world with someone and do a project as robust as a software project only through email. So I think the technology has really caught up where it makes sense. Outsourcing just was not it was not as smooth as it is today because we don't have things like Slack. We don't have things like Zoom. Asynchronous communication tools around a thing. And just working globally, like, that's now become more of a standard thing that even big companies like Google, Founders Live, like, you guys connect so many people abroad. And just all over the world. That was not a thing 20 years ago. And so I think a huge misconception is that we're still stuck there today, where outsourcing will still have the same limitations, but that's just not true because the tools are completely different. Like, just having video quality this clear, being like, if trying to do Founders Live 20 years ago would have been basically impossible. And it's the same thing with outsourcing. I agree. It was probably very much impossible 20 years ago, but times have changed. The world's way more global. The technology has caught up. So I think that's the biggest misconception, is that it's still the same as it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's really an interesting angle to take, or just like to be able to explain it that, it's weird that stigma can hang even though technology advances and things are different, right? So, I'm glad that you brought that up. Tell us a little bit about what you would suggest. How can startups get started? What process can they take with you, with Aloa, and how would you suggest the entry into, if they're thinking about product built, if they need some help, what would you suggest those first steps are?
For sure, checking out our website. On our website, we have a lot of great resources in terms of outsourcing too. So if you want to try to take a stab at outsourcing yourself, we have a lot of great resources. But if you're interested in going with us, also on our website, we have many different buttons where when you click them, a form pops up. And This helps give our team and especially the strategists that would be working with you a bunch of context beforehand. And so I think that's the best way to kickstart it, is just visiting our website and then clicking any of the buttons on there that say, hire your team now, and just going through the process.
Nice. Just hit the website, walk through, and check it out. Is last question on this. Who would, and even just vocalizing it right now, what are the qualifications, or when is it maybe too early for a company and a startup to engage with Aloa, and what should they think about doing before, or what is required to actually be working with you?
Yeah, I think if you're bootstrapped, and if you're really like strapped for cash to the point where like even just anything outside of an equity hire is like really challenging. Honestly, looking at an equity hire is a really good alternative, and going maybe even using some no-code tools to get like an MVP off the ground. If you're past that, and you have, like, maybe you've done a friends and family round, or you've received some sort of funding, or you're profitable and you just need to scale the team, then I think those are people that would be a great fit for outsourcing in Aloa.
Great. Good to hear. All right. So shifting a little bit before we end on this, which has just been it's a great conversation and really, really educational here. Let's go with a little bit of just kind of advice for early stage founders. So this is more general on your journey, your path. It's not easy. It's a fun ride. It can be challenging and up and down, left and right. What would you say? Let's go two things, two pieces of advice that come to mind that seem to maybe have come in play for you and your team at this point in time.
Yeah, I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten, I might be butchering it, but this is just how I remember it. It's marry the mission, date the model. So when you're pursuing a startup and when you're pursuing anything, you need to really be in love with that core mission. And that mission usually doesn't change. It could tweak over time as you learn things, but usually the mission's pretty consistent. Like I really want to solve outsourcing. Like that's a huge mission. I want to make it accessible to everyone and let everyone innovate. That's been the mission. But date the model. What that means is be very open to iterating on the business model. Don't be afraid to change it. We had to change our business model so many times over the last few years because the mission always stayed the same. Like we wanted to solve this, but how we went about doing that changed. So marry the mission, date the model. That's the first piece of advice. And then I think a second good one would probably be, I think try to be as transparent with yourself and as open with yourself as possible. Because it's so easy to, and it kind of goes back to the first one, but it's something that I've definitely been guilty of, and it takes a lot to snap me out of it. But try to be honest with yourself when things aren't working out, and just like fail very quickly. And so just make sure that you don't let ego get in the way and be like, no, I think this will work. I just need a couple more weeks, or I need to do this. Be prepared to fail and change very quickly. So I guess both advice usually go hand in hand, but these two pieces of advice have helped me a lot over the past 4 or 5 years as I've been building this.
Yeah, those two are great. Marry the mission, date the model is really, really cool. Like, thank you. I've heard in various ways of that, but I think that's a great one. And for everyone listening, really, really take that to heart. Because business models, like the world changed from the pandemic.
Yeah.
So a business model and revenue models will shift. That shifts with the society, with technology, with like pop culture. So the mission though can be very, very important and long lasting. Yeah. So I appreciate that. But we are running out of time here for this conversation today. Chris, I want to thank you so much, and I want to give you the last word. what would you like to leave everyone with today?
Yeah. If you're interested in software development, outsourcing, or just software development in general, feel free to reach out to me. Free to check out our website. Happy to chat with anyone. I live and breathe this space.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much. So I really appreciate this conversation, and we'll see you on the trails. And for everyone, this is Nick Hughes. I'm this founder and CEO of Founders Live, and this has been Founders Live Conversations. Thank you all so much, and hey, stay healthy and stay safe.